All right, then the next 2 weeks we play two games against Ole Miss and at Arkansas. I think we should win both of these games pretty handily. Ole Miss has a new coach. It's at home for us. I really don't see a problem, especially with Ole Miss. Now at Arkansas, they have some of that winning mentality from the past couple of years, but they lost a lot of players. They lost a coach. I know they got a new coach with a new offensive system, but I really think we're going to win both of these games pretty handily, especially with Tebow and that offense. Percy Harvin's probably going to run wild on both of those defenses.
I agree. As long as we show up to these games, and that's been a problem for us going on the road against the West team, especially. And maybe we overlooked the team because we're supposed to blow out Arkansas, and we could end up having a closer game. Ole Miss last year, where we only beat by a touchdown, two touchdowns maybe. But at any rate, you were worried about it for a little while on the road in Oxford last year. And they have Jevin Sneed, who once was a Florida commit and looked pretty good at Texas. That's a transfer that will be playing for them. So a lot of people are picking them to
Yeah.
surprise somebody. I just
And
really
then we
don't
got
think
the
it'll
big
be
one
us.
at home, probably our biggest home game of the season. No, it's definitely our biggest home game of the season. It's LSU, defending national champions. Yes, they had two losses last season. Yes, they probably should have lost to the Gators last season at LSU, but they still have a ton of talent, a ton of speed. That should be an extremely, extremely good game. I'm looking at a Gator win. I think that we got a big chip on our shoulder from last season, and it'll be at home. It'll be a raucous crowd, and I don't think that there's any way we lose this game. Especially with everything riding in the balance. This is the game everybody's going to be looking at home.
You can never overlook the defending champions, especially when they return so much talent, well, other than at quarterback. But we will definitely be circling this one on the calendar, and we'll be fired up. It's a home game. I'm really not. I'm more worried about it than most of the other games, but I'm fairly confident that we will
Then we get a
prevail.
bye week. The bye week is good. Gives us a little bit of breather before coming up to the next couple games. Because we finished the rest of the season without a bye week. It looks like 6 consecutive games. We have Kentucky at home, homecoming. I don't think that we're going to have any problem with Kentucky. Kentucky's losing a lot of players. They're not going to be anywhere close to where they were last season. Even though they gave us a tough game, it was at Kentucky. I think we'll be fine. And that takes us to the Georgia game. And this is the game everybody in the country is circling on their calendar. Georgia and Florida should be pretty good at that point. Should be 1-2 in the race for the SEC East. That's my prediction. Obviously, that's the prediction of a lot of other people. They may even be number one, number two at that point. And you never know where this one's gonna go. I mean, we're gonna have a huge chip on our shoulder from last year. That whole running onto the field thing was, kind of lowbrow. But this is gonna be a really tough game. Georgia is so fast. Their defense is incredible. If there's any team in the country that could stop our offense, they've got so much speed, so much talent. And on offense, they've got Noshawn Moreno, and he is the next Herschel Walker, if you listen to anybody from Georgia. And, of course, they've got the great quarterback, Matthew Stafford, who's entering his third year just like Tim Tebow. So if everything plays out right, these could be the number one and number two teams. I'm really, really worried about this game, but I think we're going to be really, really fired up.
I've been worried about this game since last year, since the season ended, and you sort of start looking ahead to the next season. A few people have talked me into it, gotten me more confident. I think Matthew Stafford is incredibly overrated when you look at his touchdown interception ratio from last year or over his career. He's obviously got the big arm and gets the comparisons to the Elway type and projected as a high draft pick, but he's really not there. The strength of their team is Noshawn Moreno, and he's obviously impressive. And they have the redshirt freshman Caleb King that'll be playing for them this year too, so they'll have like a two-headed monster kind of thing, and that's obviously something to worry
Be good at
about. But I used to think they were just going to roll us and it was going to be bad, and our year was going to be 2010 to make a run at this thing. But I really do like our chances for the reasons you mentioned, that we'll be fired up while it's in Jacksonville. We have a really good record against them in the last 20 years, 18 years in Jacksonville. I mean, even the Zucker beat them twice there. The only time he couldn't beat him was a couple days after he got fired, and I think that's
So
understandable.
we'll all be looking forward to that game. I'll be there for sure, and I'll be giving my tailgating and weekend experience. Absolutely. The next week we got at Vanderbilt. Vandy is not going to be anywhere offense to what they were before. They lost a lot of people. They still don't have Jay Cutler.
Which was still
So
bowl
I don't see them.
ineligible.
As for the next game is South Carolina. South Carolina is one of those teams I just can't figure out. I don't know if they're going to be good or going to be bad. It all depends on their quarterback situation. But when it really comes down to it, this is at home. We're probably going to be fired up because the first year of Urban Meyer, we couldn't win to get to the SEC championship game. It was South Carolina that did it. The very next year, they were an extremely tough challenge, and we got through them with a block kick by Jarvis Moss. But this year, I think that we're going to be fine against them. It's at home. It's against Spurrier. I just can't see it happening, them taking it.
I'm confident that we'll win this one also. I'm always afraid of Steve Spurrier, and I'm mostly afraid this year because he hasn't been talked up a lot. They're kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and they're going to get someone. But I think at the Swamp, we should be clicking pretty good as a defense by then and as an offense. I think we're going to win, but watch out for South Carolina and other teams.
Hopefully, that would be
Maybe he'll get Georgia
absolutely
again for it.
wonderful if that could happen. The next week is Citadel. We're going to win by 50. That's at home. 50 is the spread.
Oh, that's it?
I could only imagine. And then the last week of the season, we got at Florida State. And, I still also don't know what to think about Florida State. They're one of those teams that could be pretty good, and they're one of those teams that could suck like they have the last couple of years. And at Florida State, being a rivalry game, it could be extremely close. I'll be at that game again. I've never actually been to Doak Campbell Stadium, so I'm pretty lit to that. And I don't know.
I wouldn't if I were you. I've been to Doak twice,
Yeah.
and both times I swore I'd never go back.
Well, I've never been there, and I just want to make sure that I'm there at least once. And hopefully we'll be undefeated by that point, but I doubt it. That would be pretty good. All right, so that's our season in a nutshell. James, what are your thoughts on wins and losses this season for the Gators?
Regular season, I guess you can't assume that we'll make a SEC championship game. We'll make a bowl game, but if you just count those 12 games, 10-2 is about the worst I see us doing, and probably the most likely is 10-2 or 11-1. I do have hope for a 12-0 season, but we do have a pretty tough schedule, as we always do.
Yeah, I mean, the only places that I could see that
What
we
about
could
you?
lose realistically is going to be at Tennessee, LSU at home, Georgia, and Florida State maybe. I really can't see them losing more than 2 games. I mean, that would be kind of out of the realm of possibilities for me. I think that they probably the highest chances that they're going to lose is at Tennessee and Georgia. That Georgia game is really, really scaring me. I think that we're going to be pretty jacked up for it. That Tennessee game is also really, really scaring me. Anything in Knoxville, especially with a team that's going to be pretty good. They're not going to be bad. They had a good season. They got to the SEC championship game last year. They didn't lose too much. I think that Tennessee game is probably going to be our one weakness if we're going to lose a game. Hopefully, we're going to go 11-1, and maybe we'll get some help from some of the other schools. I know that Georgia has to play Auburn this year, and Auburn's going to be pretty good. So if Auburn helps us out, maybe South Carolina, then we can make it to the SEC championship game, having 1 or 2 losses in the conference.
As an additional note on the SEC, Auburn, I think, will be very good this year. They're kind of under the radar nationally, but with their new offensive coordinator and their defense is always good, I'd look for them to probably win the West. But I also think that Alabama is going to be much improved, and the freshman Julio Jones, very good things are coming out of their media about how he's performing in the preseason.
All
so
right.
far.
Well, since we're on that subject, why don't we go through what you think the rankings are going to be for the SEC East and West, respectively. Go ahead and start with the East.
Well, I think you've got to put Georgia number 1 because they're a little more proven all the way around. Our defense was really pathetic as we closed the year last year. However, I would put us second because we averaged over 30 points a game last year, and I really don't see any. We've only gotten better on offense, and with an improved defense, there's no reason we can't hold people to less than 30. So you'd think that we'd win most of our games. You got to put Tennessee third, South Carolina fourth, and Kentucky and Vanderbilt. I think that's pretty much what most people are picking. Florida and Georgia 1, 2, and then the rest